Investor Connect podcast program. This is Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show, in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, private equity, family offices, and many other investor groups for startups and growth companies. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for joining us. Well, hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today we're here with Amos Schwartzfarb about his book, Sell More Faster. Amos, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Hal. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Great. So what is your background? What did you do before you wrote this book?
So I've been in startups for close to 25 years now. I've been with Techstars investing through the accelerator for the last 4. But for the 20 odd years before that, I was a part of 6 different companies, all early stage, ranging from the first 20 employees to being the founder a couple of times. And have been operating really the majority of my career, and the majority of that operating as an early stage customer development and salesperson, figuring out things like who is our customer, what do we sell them, and why do they buy it.
Well, great. So why did you write the book, Sell More Faster?
I kind of love telling this story because I didn't set out to write a book. The genesis of it is I've been doing this for a long time, and especially here with my work at Techstars, a lot of the time that I spend with the companies in program, a lot of the basic principles that ultimately ended up in the book. But on top of that, while we have I have a phenomenal peer group of managing directors across Techstars, most of them did not come out of early stage sales. They were either more product or technology focused or marketing focused. And so because of that, internally, I would also get a lot of requests for, hey, can you help this company? Or, hey, can you come to my program and do a workshop on sales? And it's that last question which sort of started this cycle that has now become what turned into a book. So after getting the question, hey, can you come in and do a workshop on sales several times? And I would always sort of turn to the person and say, sure, is there some specific aspect that you want me to talk about? And the answer almost always was, I don't know, do what you think is best. And that's not a lot to work with. And so right. And, internally, I'm thinking to myself, like, gosh, a workshop on sales, I don't even know what that would possibly mean, because now we're talking at 500,000 foot view. It's not going to be useful to someone who's actually dealing with a problem they're trying to solve, especially in an early stage company. So what I decided to do last summer was to write a list of every possible workshop that I could do, and then poll all of my peers and say, hey, of this list of, and it ended up being a list of 18 potential workshops. Of this list of 18 workshops, tell me 1 or 2 that you think would be the most impactful, and I'll go create workshops around those. And so when I created that list and I was getting ready to send it out to poll all of my peers, and I'm reading through the list, and one of the things that I realized was, there was sort of 2 parts to it, but a lot of what's here isn't going to make sense to a lot of people, because it's either the vernacular that I use, or it's specific to someone that, if you're not inside of sales or haven't been a CEO, like, it just might not be familiar enough. So what I decided to do is say, I'm going to write like a little couple of paragraphs on each potential workshop, and so that it makes it easier for people to understand what I'm trying to get at. What I ended up doing, not intentionally, was I ended up writing 6 blog posts that encompassed all 18 potential workshops. And I was like, oh, very great. This should be helpful. This is something that I can send to all of my peers, and maybe Techstars could even use these blogs as content with it. Because at the time, I actually still don't have a blog of my own. So I was like, Techstars could use this content. We can share it with lots of entrepreneurs all over the place. And so before I did that, but I had written it already, but before I went out and shared it with all of my peers, I wanted to crowdsource from some people close to me. Does this make sense? Can you comprehend it? Like, give me feedback on it. I want to make it better, because especially if we're going to end up publishing it on the Techstars site, like, it has to be really good. So I did that. I got a lot of really great feedback. I did a lot to make it better. And one of the persistent pieces of feedback that I got was, have you thought about writing a book? I think there's a book here. And to this point, it was not one of the things that I was aspiring to go do. And so, I kind of scratched my head, and I was like, I don't even really know how to do that. I don't really have the time to do that, but thank you for the compliment. And then serendipity is a really fun thing. And I feel like I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of it in my life. One of the portfolio companies that went through my very first program was, at the time, they were called authors.me. They've changed their name to StoryFit. They're a local Austin company. And when they were in Techstars, one of their primary customers was publishers. And one of the people who went through Techstars had come out of publishing, left authors.me or StoryFit, and went back into the publishing world. And so timing is a funny thing. She called me up, had no idea that I did all this, but she called me up because she said, "Hey, I just got a job as an acquisitions editor for Wiley, which is the publisher who published Somewhere Faster. And do you think there's anybody at Techstars who might have a book in them? And if so, would you mind introducing them to me?" And it was like literally when I was in the middle of all this. So I said, "Hey, maybe me." I sent over the blog post that I had written. I said, "I don't know if this is good. I don't know if there's anything here. Give me really honest feedback, and my feelings won't be hurt if this is not good." And she got back to me within a day, and she's like, "There's definitely something here. I can't find anything else like it in the market, and all my quick research, but we're going to do some more. I think we have something." And fast forward about 6 weeks later, we had signed a book deal.
Well, that's great. So you see a lot with sales and early stage companies. What would you say is the specific sales challenge for a startup or growth company that they face?
There's obviously a lot, but the two that I see most frequently, there's not a priority order to these, but I'll try to talk about them sort of in the sequence that I think about them. The first is that there's a really distinct difference between sales as defined by the way people think about it when you think about a car salesperson or a software salesperson, and what you're doing at an early stage company, which is really customer development. And until you've raised maybe your Series A, maybe even your Series B, and you've got a lot of customers and you're doing something repeatable, you're not really doing sales. You're doing customer development, even as you hit some of the early repeatability. And so the first biggest challenge that I see is the way that people think about it. They think that we know what the product is, and we're just going to hire a couple of salespeople, and we're just going to go at it. And the challenge becomes is the second thing. The challenge becomes a second challenge, which is that people don't really know what I call their W3, who their customer really is, what their customer is really buying from them, and why they are buying it from them. And that's the work that you need to do to figure out how do you get to a repeatable and scalable sales process. And so the challenge is figuring that out and having the rigor and discipline to be really specific, really narrow in your approach, and not to speed up too fast because of outside pressure of either optics or investors or whatever, but really to take the time to figure it out. So that's how I think about the challenge, which is like really figuring out what it is that you are doing, not just your theory, but what's the data behind it to support why you're right.
So what's the biggest mistake startups make with sales, aside from just not being very purposeful with hiring salespeople and setting goals?
Yeah, I think the two biggest mistakes that I see, and they're very much related to the challenges. Number one is hiring salespeople too soon. Hiring people that are and hiring really, really good salespeople too soon before they really know who they're selling to, what they're buying, and why they're buying it. Because if you hire a great salesperson, they're going to go out and they're going to close a bunch of business, but it might not be the right business. And I see it all the time where it's not the right business, or they're not successful because you haven't figured out messaging, and then they leave when they would have been really good in the company at some point. So that's one of the biggest mistakes that I see, especially CEOs who don't come from sales, like they're more technical or product oriented, and they don't think they're salespeople. They need to be out having these conversations in the early days and not hiring someone to do the work. It's hard work, but they've got to be doing it themselves. And then the second thing, which is related to that, which is trying to move too fast on too wide a group with no data. So like an example of that would be, we can sell to any enterprise, our software to any enterprise customer. So we're going to go have conversations with everyone on the Fortune 1000 list. That's too wide, right? Like there's going to be so many differences in how a healthcare company versus an insurance company versus a real estate company versus an e-commerce company are going to think about many of these things often. And so I see people trying to go really, really wide, not having data of why they're selling to who they're selling to. And it's a big mistake that ultimately ends up in having to step back. Maybe they get customers, but then they've got customers with competing priorities. They can't do it because their resources aren't big enough. That's what I would say, like the biggest mistakes that I see people make.
So what's the biggest misconceptions startups have about sales? What are they viewing wrong about it to begin with?
So I have an opinion of what this is, a strong opinion of what this is, but I'm curious to know how, I'll give that to you, but I'm also curious to know, when you ask this question, how you think about it, because there's probably there's a lot of misconceptions, I think, about sales. But I think the biggest one that I see is that sales is that as soon as you think you know what you're selling, all you need to do is pick up the phone and call someone, and either you're good or not because you convince them to buy it. And that is a big misconception, because you can have the exact right product in the exact right market, but if you haven't yet figured out why they want it and how they're going to measure it, you're not really going to be able to communicate it perfectly, which will oftentimes end in a misalignment in how you're interacting with them, even if you close them, and certainly before, if you can't even get them closed.
Yeah, from my point of view, what I found is people misunderstand the cost of sales. For some reason, they think it's going to be half the price of technology that they're putting in place. But in companies, especially later stage companies, sales is typically 2x the cost of what the technology or the product is costing the company. So the misunderstanding is about how much it really costs to do sales because of all the elements that go into it. But that's just my perspective on it.
Yeah. I think that's right too. I mean, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what sales means. I definitely think you're right as well.
Sure. So how is selling in today's tech market evolving or changing? There seems like there's a lot more tools, there's different channels or social media. How do you see that impacting your approach?
Yeah, I think that on one side, you can say that people that are selling today have a really big advantage over people that were selling even 10 years ago or 20 years ago, because of all of the automation and all the technology that really make identifying your targets easier. But in the same vein, it also makes it more competitive to get someone's attention, partially because of all the tools that are available and ways to reach your targets, but also because of all the other distractions with technology. And this isn't really part of your question. Like, I think this is how it's changing, which is like, there's a lot that people have it to their advantage. However, there's a lot of things that make getting their attention really, really challenging. And so I'll circle that back around to, it becomes even more important to be really disciplined and really specific about your initial customer set, and truly understanding what is the thing that you're delivering to them that they care about. And so I think that's always been important. And with the ease of reaching those people, it becomes even more important so that you can actually get their attention when you reach them.
Right. That's a good point. So what is the launch date of the book?
The book comes out on September the 4th. Really excited about it. So not just the hard copy, but there will be digital formats as well. And then there's an Audible copy that's coming out in late September as well.
Oh, great. And where does one go to buy the book?
You can get the book. You can actually pre-order it already on Amazon.com or on Barnes and Nobles. You can also get to either one of those buying pages from the book website, which is sellmorefasterbook.com.
Great. We'll put those in the show notes. And in the last few minutes that we have here, what else should we cover that we haven't?
I think we covered a lot, but since we're specifically talking about early stage sales, and hopefully some of the people that are listening to this are founders that are trying to solve these problems, I think the thing that I really want to stress is that the way to go about figuring out how to build a repeatable, scalable sales process, it's not hard. It's like the concepts are really simple, but it's not easy work. Right. That's one of the things that I really try to stress in the book, which is that the concepts they're simple concepts, but the work is very, very tedious and time consuming. But put in the time. You've decided to go out and become a founder. You're putting yourself out there. You're vulnerable. It's going to be really, really hard. This is something that you have to get right, not just so that you can build so that you can build a great sales team and process but also because without this, it's virtually impossible to build the right product it's really hard to get really great investors because all of this ties together how you're communicating what it is that you're doing.
Well, great. Well, we look forward to the launch of the book. It sounds like it's going to be quite helpful to all startups and everyone should get it, and hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
Thank you. I would be delighted to. Thank you so much for having me.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.